Hello and welcome to our Lakeside chat. We are David Wofford and Katie Noonan, co-chairs of the Rotary Nature Center Friends. And we're so happy that you can join us tonight.
As we begin our program, it is important for us to acknowledge that we are on stolen land, that Lake Merritt is part of Ohlone territory. We hear now from Corinna Gould, spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of LaShawn and co-founder of Segura Te Land Trust.
Good afternoon, relatives. My name is Corinna Gould. I am the spokesperson for the Confederated Villages of LaShawn. We are here today at what most folks think of as Lake Merritt. We are in the territory of Huichin. Huichin is actually a territory that encompasses 6 Bay Area cities: Oakland, Berkeley, Alameda, Emeryville, Albany, and Piedmont. And this was a place of abundance. I'm so happy that people from all walks of life that now come into our territory can enjoy this beautiful place that my ancestors have enjoyed since the beginning of time. My relationship to the land that I have been born to, raising my children and grandchildren here, has been to tell the story, the truth of what happened on this land before other people came here. I'm hoping that as we begin to learn these lessons of fires in California, the pandemic that's happening, that human beings come back to living in reciprocity with the earth.
Thank you, Corinna. I'd like to take a moment to pause and remember the people and the animals that are suffering today because of our lack of reciprocity with the earth, as eloquently expressed by Corinna. We are Rotary Nature Center Friends. We are an independent volunteer nonprofit in Oakland since 2021, providing online and in-person programming for all the people of Oakland. We're engaging the community in real science and stewardship activities, bringing nature and people together in the heart of downtown Oakland to steward the nation's first wildlife refuge. And we have gathered together educators and museum interpretive directors. We have people who are artists to come together to help us achieve our mission. And we want to thank you for coming here tonight. It's with great pleasure that we host tonight an online screening of Kari Paul's film, Hank, the rescue Pelican at Lake Merritt, work in progress premiere and panel discussion on a better future for Hank. So without further delay, I am very proud on behalf of Rotary Nature Center Friends to present Hank.
Hey, Big Girl. How's it going? I know. Come on. This way. Here we go. Come on. Good. Down here. Is it good? Damn good. And careful, you eat too fast.
Very warm congratulations to the team behind that. I know we can't really clap, but feel free to send your reactions with hearts, clapping symbols. My name is Mandana, and I will be leading the panel discussion with the incredible team behind the film, as well as a few additional individuals that weren't in the film, but definitely supported it. But again, I want to give a warm welcome to the incredible team behind the film. Thank you all for being here tonight. First and foremost, Kari Paul, the director and producer of this film, is with us. John Hill is here as well, who is the producer of the film. Stephen Summers, as you saw, Hank Feeder since 2015 is with us. Layla Arum, she's part of Hank's caretaking team since 2015 as well. And lastly, we have Alex Harris. He is the author of this book right here, as you can see on my screen, Birds of Lake Merritt. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I wanted to start with kind of a fan favorite question to Stephen and Layla. Why is Hank named Hank? Is there a story behind that you'd like to share with everyone?
I'll tell you what I know, and that's there was a pelican before Hank that was named Helen, that was a male, and they found that out through autopsy when it died. And when Hank got to come here from Oregon, they knew from the paperwork from her vet care in Oregon that she was a she, but they decided to have some fun with it and named him Hank. Since they had a female with a male's name, a male, well, whatever. The opposite. I can't even take it straight anymore. So that's the story that I was told from the people that were there when she arrived.
Lila, do you have anything to add?
I learned that story recently from a friend who had heard it from Stephen. I often just tell people Hank is short for Henrietta, and we live in the Bay Area, and she's very fluid, so it all works out.
Great answer. So much of this film, by the way, congratulations again. I don't think I've seen a film where there's such a focus on the human bond with an animal. It's often this wordless bond, but you can tell, Stephen, it's an emotional one for you, especially when she kind of grabs and goes. You kind of walk off saying, but she'll remember me. So I'm wondering for each of you on this panel, I'm wondering if each of you could talk about how this bond has played out for you, both in the film and outside of the film, with humans interacting with animals and birds specifically.
My bond and catalyst with Hank as it is now has its DNA from when she was abandoned by the city and they fired me and they were lying to me and hiding it from me. And I found out, and the panic that I felt realizing that she hadn't been fed, and I don't want to go on, but I was scared for her. So my bond and catalyst I've always felt that my connection with her is being there in an emergency when no one else was there. I was there for her. And I think that's cemented my connection with her in a way that people that have come after haven't. And I think she knows it too.
Thank you for sharing.
As the director, I think I first came across this story when I ran into Lila feeding Hank, and I just thought I kind of watched them from a distance sitting together, and I just thought it was such a beautiful little moment. And I'm such a big fan of Lake Merritt, and it's obviously this beautiful natural refuge at the center of an urban environment, and it just got me thinking a lot about how we interact with the wildlife that we share our cities with. So that's kind of like the running thread of the film, I think, is just having this little slice of nature in the middle of our city and how we pay attention to the animals we kind of share that space with.
I'd love to hear what Alex has to say. Your rendering of Hank is so beautiful. Will you tell us about your relationship with her?
Sure. Hi. Thank you. My relationship. So as I was sort of learning about Lake Merritt and the birds there and working on my book, there were a lot of, I think Hank was the only bird that was like a specific individual. All the other species were just like, whatever, ducks and all the kinds of birds, any kind, cormorants, ducks, egrets, whatever. And they were just types of birds. And there wasn't any sort of, I feel a little bit connected to all of them, but with Hank, because it was an individual, it kind of felt a little more personal, and B, it really did like literally change the way that I was going about it, because with all the other birds, I was painting from photographs because I'm a very slow painter. And so I would just find a bird, find a good composed shot of the bird I wanted to paint and go from that. And in Hank's case, I couldn't just search for photos of, American white pelicans. I had to work from a very small subset because I felt like I have to paint actually literally this specific bird versus just like a representative pelican. And so my research process was sort of enhanced / hindered by that, because I had to really think about it more, get into it, like go through people's old Google photos from 2008 and try to be like, I think that's gotta be like, so there was more of that kind of process, which made that, and then writing the blurb also, it was like, here's a story where I can really tell this specific bird's story versus, like any old birding book, like here's like what this kind of bird looks like, here's how it acts. It's like, no, here's what this bird looks like and how this bird acts. So that was, I think, a really good challenge in that process.
Alex, while I have you, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your book. You described the rich history of Lake Merritt. It was the first wildlife refuge in the US, which is remarkable. There's such rich biodiversity there, as we've seen both in the film, but also just taking a walk there. I'd be curious to ask you, how much of that would be true? In the book, you write that Lake Merritt, you quote somebody saying, Lake Merritt is nature's heartbeat in Oakland. How much of that would be true if the birds weren't there?
Well, my knee-jerk reaction is to say like it wouldn't be, because the birds are such an important part of how we interact with nature there, and how nature, even without outside of our experience, just how nature is there on its own. So I want to give like a extreme, sort of pro bird answer, but there's a lot of wildlife there that isn't birds, under the water, around the water, this kind of thing. So it would be, I'm sure, true to some extent, but it would be not as healthy and vibrant, I think, of a nature's heartbeat without the sort of predominant, charismatic wildlife that the birds provide.
Absolutely charismatic. Yeah, which Hank has. You can tell there's a little flair. Yeah. John, most of your artistic endeavors and creative projects are human-centered. I'm curious, were there any challenges in producing this film and working with Hank as one of the main characters?
Well, what's interesting is I didn't really know anything about Hank. I'd never seen Hank before around the lake or anything like that. So my entire experience with it is really through everyone else. And I think when when Kari was first telling me a little bit about like what the idea is and what's going on, I think my first, maybe not problem, but the imagination that I had was like, a bunch of people like in all black going in like the dead of night with like ski masks and like this really overly, I don't know, like spy mission against the city, and like, it's a rogue group of individuals fighting against the government. So I kind of had to throw that away and we ended up with something that's much more sentimental and fun and emotional and cute. But I was, sort of still hoping for this secret ragtag group of spies.
There was an element of that when we first started it, going there to try and avoid the staff and city workers, and so yeah, there was definitely in those early days with Lila and I, a lot of clandestine operation. It's like, are they there? Or like, they're not there. I don't think they're there yet. Or they're gone. I just saw them leave. It's okay to go. Yeah. You missed it.
Stephen and Lila, can you share more about that? This was after the city had cut off funding that you both went kind of undercover rogue feeding Hank on your own. Is that right?
I think it's really important to share with our audience that Stephen and I actually have permission from the California Fish and Wildlife Department to continue feeding and taking care of Hank. It's only the city of Oakland Parks and Rec Division that we don't understand why, but they refuse to allow us to actually feed Hank where she was fed for the first 15 years of her life at Lake Merritt, which is in the safety of the bird yard. It's a wildlife refuge bird yard. It's for wildlife like Hank. So we're struggling to understand what reasons the city might have for asking us. I was asked to no longer feed her, Hank, in the safety of the bird yard. And by safety, if you saw in the beautiful movie by Kari, you saw Stephen standing outside of the bird yard, outside in the complete open. And what that means for Hank and for us is we are at the mercy of everyone walking by with off-leash dogs. And everyone knows I'm a dog lover. But if a dog comes charging towards you, even if it's just to say hello, that's it. Hank's out of there. And she may or may not come back to eat. That's absolutely terrible for Hank. Let's say it's an unfriendly dog. Well, she can't fly away. She has to swim away. She is at a disadvantage. We've blocked many off-leash dogs from getting to Hank. We also worry about her. If you noticed in the film, Hank was so hungry and eager to reach Stephen that she's actually coming outside of the water, and we have found her sometimes on the sidewalk. Well, what if a bicyclist comes by, or a skateboarder, or now we have motorcyclists coming by? What if a person's having a really bad day and they just take it out on a disabled Pelican? It happens. We're in an urban area. So what we're asking for help from the audience is help us convince the city of Oakland that the wildlife refuge is there for animals like Hank. She's a special animal. She relies on humans, trained volunteers, to keep her alive. So help us figure out a way to transition Hank back into being fed in the safety of the bird yard. We, Stephen and I, are very open to ideas, suggestions, contacts. So that's a long answer, but Stephen, is there anything you'd like to add?
Just a couple of things. That film was shot just off the boathouse parking lot, everybody. And if you know Lake Merritt, especially on the weekends, that can be a very lively spot. And sometimes, not just for her safety, but it can be so busy and loud. And sometimes even our spot where we feed her, what you saw, can be occupied, and we won't get the opportunity to even feed her that day. So that happens, can happen also. I also would like this. I have a theory because, you know, I worked at the nature center, and I was there when they closed it down and was kind of caught up in that. And I have an idea why they won't admit to feeding Hank and will consider her a wild bird in spite of everything that they know. I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I think it has a lot to do with saving face. And I think that there's an opportunity to petition the city in a different way, because all of the people, and for good reason, the great majority of them that closed down the nature center and botched the reopening and opposed us for feeding Hank, those people are gone. And I think if we can frame this in a sort of give the city the opportunity to right a wrong, a sort of avian reparation to Hank, and let us have that space again. I mean, it costs them nothing. They don't need to do anything. And it gives them a chance to do the right thing. That's what I'm thinking in a nutshell, but yeah.
We're going to definitely open it up afterwards too. There'll be a call to action for audience members to get involved, but more on that. But really, it's been Stephen and Lila really kind of leading the charge. And one of the questions that I loved, John, you kind of helped assemble this at the last panel meeting. John opened it up for the kids to ask questions, and a question I'm kind of seeing repeated for some of you audience members is, one, what's it like to feed Hank? And two, how many times do you feed Hank? And a question I just saw pop up as well is, where do you get the fish?
We feed her once a day. As we bring 3 or 4 pounds, be fortunate if she eats all that when we do it, though.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I'd like to add to that. It used to be very much like clockwork, the way Stephen and I Hank. And I think this carried over from when Stephen was feeding Hank as an employee in the bird yard. But it used to be that when Hank's white pelican friends would start arriving at the end of May, that's when Hank started to pull away, and she could feed on her with her friends, because white pelicans are collective feeders. Unlike brown pelicans that dive and individually catch their fish, white pelicans work as a team to corral fish. And so if Hank is alone during the months of, say, end of December through end of May, she's going to need a little assistance from her human friends to round out her 4 pounds of fish that she needs to consume every day. During the pandemic, Stephen and I were paying for the fish ourselves, but with the help of many kind people, they provided donations, including the board of the Rotary Nature Center Friends, for which we are so grateful. But we started realizing that the fish we were getting from some of the markets, the quality was going down and the prices were going up. Mm-hmm. So I reached out to the Oakland Zoo because I had some connections from doing the night heron and snowy egret rescues down by the post office. And I asked if there was any way that we could buy fish from them, maybe at a discount, but knowing that the Oakland Zoo would have amazing quality fish. So their response was, absolutely not. We're going to donate the fish to you, which couldn't be a better answer, right?
Yes.
And so, the Oakland Zoo is also a jewel of Oakland. And I know I am incredibly grateful to them for being partners with us and keeping Hank alive, and also answering our questions as to how best to introduce the fish to her. Because in a way, we're not just feeders; we're caretakers. So, as you can tell in the beautiful film, Kari did an incredible job of capturing Hank and her many moods.
Yeah.
She is a very charismatic bird, and he, you can only imagine how she would feel if you present her with a fish that's not quite up to her standards. So having that good quality fish from the Oakland Zoo, having them back us in what we're trying to do has been incredibly important.
It's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that they've been so supportive. And, in the last panel, Stephen, you called this film a gift to Hank. And so I want to open it up to Kari and John. The film is so tightly bound between Stephen and Hank's relationship, but there is a third character in all of this, and that's the city of Oakland. Kari, you've called it your love letter to Oakland, and more pointedly to Lake Merritt. I'm wondering if you both can share a little bit more about Oakland as a character in this film and what it means to you, and how you've creatively decided to kind of literally just leave it in the backdrop.
Who goes first, me or John? Oh, I'm getting pointed at. Yeah, I mean, this is my first film. And so I kind of just did it on the fly. We filmed it in one weekend. John and I edited it all ourselves. I had to teach myself Adobe Premiere. I funded it myself. So I knew it was going to be a short film just based on the time and the budget that we had. So I wanted to keep the focus pretty tightly on Hank and Stephen and just kind of Lake Merritt as a setting and the birds of the lake. I felt like there was a lot to say about Oakland and kind of how issues in Oakland reflect in the way that Hank's story is played out. But I think I'm allowing people to draw their own conclusions in terms of how the city has or has not taken care of her and things like that, just from creating this portrait. And I just kind of wanted it to be a launching off point for that discussion of how public spaces are used for nature and how we prioritize public spaces to be used for nature, where we can both protect the wildlife and give people a place to recreate in a city where we all deserve to enjoy wildlife and nature. So that's kind of at the heart of the film.
Thank you, Kari. John?
I think all of that stuff, I will take that as well. I think in addition to that, I feel like it was important for us to show not really actively how people are engaged with the lake, but like the marks that they leave behind. I think it was really important for us to like find the murals and the long-standing things that aren't happening like day in and day out, because I think it's important that everyone like in Oakland and ideally in the world has a chance to like leave some kind of mark in the places that they find important. Some people get to draw, other people get to write things, etc. Some people exist only in memory, and that's good too. But I think it's important to try to find that where you can, because it's very important to somebody at some time, and everyone should matter. That's what I got.
Thank you. Like I said, it's a beautiful film. I've been going to that lake since a child at Fairyland. So to see it evolve and continue to be a safe haven for animals like Hank, and I hope everyone can contribute as well. I want to end on one final question before I open it up. And this is for all the panelists. Say you had a magic wand. What would the end game look like for Hank? So much of that was touched on and theorized in the game, in the film, like what the end game looks like. I want to go around the panel. What does that look like to you if you had that magic wand to decide Hank's future?
In general terms or specifics?
I would,
Um,
I mean, I would be general, but if you want, you can get down to the nitty-gritty.
I'd like her to be in a place where she can be protected, where she has the company of other pelicans, where she can be monitored by professionals uh, uh, to assess her health and her condition every so often. That's something we've been wanting forever. And art, yeah, we think and I think Lake Merritt is the best place for that.
Interesting. So staying in Oakland for her.
Yeah, staying in Oakland and letting us feed her in a safe spot, and but also talking about her and not programming around her, but telling her story and her message. And when you talk about protecting, that she's the living embodiment and the personification of why we have to do that protection. So I think that's why we should do it. So that would be the best outcome, I think, for Hank, if we could get it.
To piggyback on what Stephen has said, absolutely the most imperative thing that we need is access, permission from the city of Oakland, from whomever needs to give the permission, to allow Stephen and me to feed Hank in the safety of the bird yard where the city used to feed her at the behest of Fish and Wildlife. That's what the wildlife refuge is there for, to prevent us from being able to take care of Hank and keep her as safe as possible. To me, that's an act of animal cruelty. I don't know why anyone would do that. You have a refuge, you have a sanctuary. It's meant for animals like Hank. So one of the things that we can do if we are able to return to feeding Hank in the safety of the enclosed bird yard is that we can then train a group of volunteers, be they, let's say, volunteers from the Oakland Zoo or from Wild Care or from Palomacy or Yggdrasil, or people who are just incredibly enamored by Hank. We train them how to feed Hank correctly, what to watch out for. And then she doesn't have to worry about a bicyclist coming and scaring her off, or loud music being like put right in front of her because people want to see what we're doing, or people throwing rocks at her. I mean, everything that you can imagine that has happened has happened. So absolutely, that would be my goal. Let us feed Hank in the safety of the bird yard, because we can get volunteers then to help us feed her.
And safer for us who do it also. And just one other thing about using the bird yard, and why this is important is because I learned this when I fed her in there. It allows us to be on a regular schedule, so we can show up in an appointed place at an appointed time, and train her to look for us there, as opposed to this random whenever we can get to it. If she's around, we got to look for her first. So that's why it's doubly important that we get in there to do that.
Kari, Alex, John.
Yeah, I will defer to Stephen and Lila on the best solution for Hank because they're her buddies. But I will say that I agree that she should be fed in a more protected place at the very least. And I hope this kind of creates a opening for discussion about Oakland investing more in Lake Merritt and providing more safety for all birds. We don't have time to get into it, but we had the major fish die off a couple of years ago, and there are just a lot of issues, especially with climate change affecting the wildlife in Oakland. So I would hope that the city would do more to protect the wildlife and also make it more accessible to the community that is excited to learn about the nature around us.
If I could just say a few more pieces, Kari made me think of something really important to bring up. I used to think that it would be better for Hank to be moved someplace where she could be fed all the time and there would be no threat to her well-being. She'd have the company of other white pelicans. I don't know where this place exists, but supposedly there are places like this. However, having spent the last 4 years with her, intimately getting to know her and the white pelicans that visit her, we are now aware that she has same pelicans visiting her year after year. And so the question to an animal behaviorist who's a specialist in white pelicans, who are you? Identify yourself, please. Would be, if we move Hank to another location that is not Lake Merritt, that she's called home for the majority of her life, will that harm her and depress her to the point where she will not want to live? I mean, it's a question I ask because I know that the zoo sometimes grapples with these questions if you have to move an animal. So Hank is in that unique situation where what is best for her has to include her emotional, not just physical well-being.
Absolutely. If she could speak with us on the panel, I'd love to hear from her as well. But thank you, everyone that has contributed to her care and put this film on the map. Katie, I'm going to hand it over to you. I see you have your hand raised.
Thank you. What a beautiful presentation. Congratulations to Kari. And just so grateful for your courage and for your artistry in bringing this to our attention. Rotary Nature Center Friends has been interested in Hank for quite a while, and we'd like to share a short video from our previous work.
Hank, the female white pelican, has been a resident of Lake Merritt for 16 years. She was transferred to the Rotary Nature Center by the Fish and Wildlife Service as a rescue animal because she cannot fly. Popularized by James Robinson's book, A Bird's Tale, she has become a mascot and an ambassador for wildlife in Lakeside Park. In February, Ms. Lau's and Ms. Fong's classes from Cleveland Elementary School visited the wildlife refuge to learn more about the birds and their environment. The children learned that after 15 years of care by nature center naturalists, Hank is no longer being fed by city naturalists in the winter, after the rest of her species has taken off on the Pacific Flyway to the wintering grounds. They decided to advocate for Hank by writing letters to the mayor on her behalf.
Hi, my name is Lila, and I'm in 2nd grade. My teacher is Miss Lau. My school is Cleveland. We went on a field trip to learn about the food web and watershed. Some kids saw Hank and the white pelican. Hank got injured by flying into a power line. I learned pelicans have 4 toes. I learned brown pelicans have cushions under their skin where their wing is so they don't hurt themselves when they dive.
Hank can't fly where it's warm. Hank's friend come 4 months a year only. The other months poor Hank has no other pelicans to help her hunt for food.
We went on a field trip to learn about birds, watersheds, and food webs. We saw Hank and we learned about white pelicans. I want Hank to have a good, healthy life. She only can get a few fish on her own. Please feed Hank.
That Hank should be supported right here. It's such a model for support what people can do for wildlife.
So the power of children to learn and the power of children to advocate is just something that's dear to us. Thank you so much. I'm going to give our final credits. I want to thank all of you for coming to Rotary Nature Center Friends Lakeside Chat. We want to give special thanks to Kari and to our moderator and panelists who had a deep and moving discussion tonight, to our producer, Rob Lamone, to Hank, to the Rotary Nature Center Friends and volunteers and staff, and to Jim Cobell, who I will introduce shortly. Okay, Lakeside Chats are shown on KTOP TV on Sundays from 6 to 7 p.m. And in the first 2 weeks of a month, they show Golden Oldies from our 45 show collection. And in the last 2 weeks of the month, they show the current recording of the current show. Coming up in September, we're going to hear from Bart O'Brien from the Botanical Garden in East Bay Regional Parks, of the 90th anniversary of the park system and the 84th anniversary of that park. September 7th, we will be holding a Biodiversity Day at Lake Merritt, where public will be invited to observe the biodiversity. And finally, on the 21st of September, we have Creek to Bay Day at the Sailboat House Marsh, hosted by Rotary Nature Friends. We are offering an opportunity for people who like to share the message of nature and stewardship with young people to docents. If you would like to help with our programs on site, we would like to have a group of people who are educated and ready to come out and help us during our programs. We're having an increasingly active season of programs as people want to know about the lake. In this photo, I want to give a special shout out to Alan Probert, who is here shown explaining the pollinators and the native plants at the marsh. Finally, we'd like everyone to consider making a donation to this fund for Hank. Hank is our very fond friend, going back for many, many years. And we really support this effort to take care of her. We want to thank the Frederick E. Hart Foundation for educational opportunity. We want to thank all of our volunteers, and we want to thank Rob Lamone, producer, videos. David Wofford and I are co-chairs. Kirsten Berman does artwork for us. Dr. Chancellor Walker and Betsy Schultz, Patty Donald, and many RNCF volunteers make this possible. Wanted to share as a potential inspiration that we supported a petition online to reopen the Nature Center back in 2019. And it's a good way to express your opinion. So as we close, I want to thank everyone again. And I would like to give the last word to Andrew Alden. I had a question about your thoughts about another very important person at Lake Merritt, and that is, of course, Hank the Pelican. Are you familiar with Hank?
Oh, yeah.
Following on your philosophy that we can do anything that we want, and Hank is reaching her maybe 23rd birthday give us your thoughts about having a mascot bird at the lake?
You know, in a sense, every bird at Lake Merritt is a pet bird, you know, because we've built this place for them and they've shown up. And the ones who are stuck here, we owe it to them to take care of them. Remember that pair of abandoned ducks over on the north arm of the lake? You know, I've walked by them for, you know, months like everyone else did. And I felt real bad for them because I could tell. We can't just abandon birds are people, you know, and so that's why, you know, we don't have to give them names like we gave Hank or the monsters like or Macoex. It helps to give them names because it helps make them people, but you know, we don't have to name them to think of them as people. If they're stuck here, just like everyone else who's stuck here in Oakland, we owe it. We owe it to everyone, you know, to keep taking care of them. And any other bird and people too. That's what we have to do.
It's been a wonderful evening, such an inspiration, Kari and Pam, such an inspiration to all of us. I would like to introduce Jim Cobell. Jim, are you here?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so you have asking the first question.
Well, and actually, if I can just start by congratulating everybody on this film. It's an amazing piece of work and tells a very important story about the lake. I wanted to add in just a little bit of background on pelicans at the lake. Back in the mid 60s, my dad was looking into bringing some white pelicans to Lake Merritt. His goal was to try and restore the avifauna of Lake Merritt. So try and bring back the birds that historically had visited that area. And so he brought in snow geese and Canada geese and some other birds, all non-releasable birds, so that they stayed at the lake. And he was successful in getting 5 white pelicans from Pyramid Lake coming down with folks from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And so they arrived at the lake. And I remember when they first got there, the wings were pinioned so that they wouldn't immediately leave the lake. Wanted to give them time to get used to the area. And so out of those original 5 birds, I think over the first couple of years, a couple of them left, but 2 or 3 of them stayed for a number of years. And if I'm not mistaken, it might be that Helen, the pelican, was the last of those 5 that arrived, and she was there for on the order of decades. So it's always been a goal to have white pelicans there, representing white pelicans that used to visit the San Francisco Bay Area and now once again are visiting the San Francisco Bay Area in growing numbers. So it's been a successful program. And as you've seen, Hank brings in visiting white pelicans. And if Hank wasn't there, I don't know if they would stop and visit or not at the lake. So that's a little bit of the deep background, the heritage of white pelicans at the lake. And I hope they're part of the Lake Merritt picture for many years going forward. See if we can't make that happen.
Thank you. That's really exciting. I didn't know that. And Pyramid Lake is on your way up from LA. Is that right?
It's actually over in Nevada.
Nevada. Okay.
And yeah, east of Reno and Sparks, but another big nesting area for white pelicans.
Jim, one of the questions that we've seen both posed by the panelists and very much from the audience in the chat box is how people can get involved in bringing some activism or visibility to the issue of Hank's treatment. Is it going through the city council? Is it getting everybody here to sign a petition? What are some ways to get some mobilization on the care for Hank that you would suggest?
Yeah, and I think, raising the visibility of Hank, but I think, as we've said, Hank is kind of representative of we've kind of dropped the ball on nature around Lake Merritt, and I know the city has lots and lots of other very pressing issues and that they're grappling with. But that makes it easy for things like Hank and the other birds there to kind of get pushed off the radar screen. So kind of raising that visibility. And there's a lot of people that visit the lake and care about the birds there. And I think we just need to make that known so that they stay on the radar screen for the city. And the city does have some responsibility. It's a wildlife refuge, and they can't just ignore that fact. So I think just starting that conversation with, okay, we've got lots of things that we have to focus on here in Oakland. This should be one of them, along with some other important things. And what can we do to resolve some of these?
Is there any one on the panel that wants to run for office that can help? In terms of getting this film out, Kari, do you have plans to air this anywhere else? Do you have you been in talks with any maybe PBS or networks? I feel like one of the great ways to mobilize bringing awareness is this very gift that you've produced.
Yeah, if there's anyone in this screening who wants to put this on PBS or HBO, let me know. No, I do plan on submitting it to film festivals. I would love to also submit it to some more festivals in the Bay Area. I'd like to get the word out just locally as well. So that's kind of what's next on our docket. And that's kind of part of the reason that we are fundraising in the GoFundMe, just so we have enough money to submit the film to different festivals and things like that to get it more widely distributed.
One of the questions that was posed by an audience member is there anything that can be surgically assisting Hank? Is there anything that we can do to get medical help for her? I know that she went through some power lines and damaged herself. So Stephen and Lila, is this irreversible damage?
No, but at this point in time, after so long, I don't think there's any. I think if there was a surgical repair that possible, they would have done it when she was first injured. So no, I don't know if she would even survive that kind of procedure now. The level of care that we want to get for her, I mean, it's problematic. She doesn't just come to anybody. So, we need to, how we navigate that is, I don't know if it's worth it to, have Lila and me or somebody draw her over with fish, and if a visual examination of her from 10 feet or 20 feet away is worth anything, or if you actually have to grab her and get blood and whatever. I don't know. I don't really know for me, I don't know what a bird biologist really needs to make that assessment to know how to get that opportunity to Hank, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I wonder if you were able to share with us, since you were so intimately involved with the city that provided the funding and had the whole programming, who needs to be contacted directly in order to reinstate the program?
We don't want the program reinstated because they don't have the wherewithal to do it. But in terms of like giving us that space back, I would think it's probably a combination of public works, because I think OPR now thinks that public works is responsible for that area. Um, the city council, I don't know, maybe within OPR, depending on who is still there, how you would appeal to them. Those would all be good ways of doing it. And getting as many science birder professional guys on our side to endorse what we're doing and tell them that this needs to be done and is necessary.
Katie, Jim, and also anybody else on the panel. Hank is one story. Are there other birds or animals that share kind of a similar situation that Hank is in, where its reliance on human beings, kind human beings, is based on its survival? Or is Hank kind of the main story in Lake Merritt because of its handicaps?
She's the main one there. Basically, yeah. When there were when the bird yard was active, folks, especially people like Lila, you could often look in there and see a injured bird, and you would know that it might need help, and with some help, they would grab it, she'd grab it, take it off to Lindsay or whatever. So those kind of injured birds were a little bit dependent, if they not dependent, but they were had access to human assistance if the timing was right. So there definitely was that going on. Not a lot, not so much now, because there's no birds in there. Simple as that.
Well, maybe I'm not aware of any individual birds that are receiving care. I know that Jim might be able to tell us something about that aspect of the operation of the Rotary Nature Center that really was established in 1953, and they did address oiled birds and other injured fowl. But and I'd like to say also, as someone who has been at Lake Merritt and interacting with the Rotary Nature Center, with Stephanie Benavides and the pelicans that were in the bird yard with my students at Oakland High from 1997 on, that there's a strong bond. And if you look back at old pictures, you see there's a strong bond between people and birds here that can be tapped into. If you could somehow get the attention of people. This isn't equid. This is something that people are interested in, people care about. And I think anyway, but I wanted to ask Jim about the animal welfare efforts in the past.
I guess that by way of example, and this is going back in the past, we've had pairs of swans there, tundra swans, and I think my dad even tried to get a trumpeter swan at one point, as well as the Fish and Wildlife Service and the state authorities found the lake a really good place for some of these non-releasable birds because they got good care, and we could make sure that they had adequate food. So through the years, a number of non-releasable birds found themselves at the lake, and some of them, like some of the swans we had, were fairly famous characters, as well as the pelicans. So there's a little bit of a history to this through the years.
Yeah, I was gonna add that's something I really wish I could have included in the film. Just the history of feeding birds on the lake. There's a lot of very cool old footage of people coming to the duck yards by the lake and just watching them be fed. So yeah, there's a long history of feeding birds on Lake Merritt, although I think the science and the public knowledge around whether we should feed birds has changed, and the city stopped its daily duck feeding program, but obviously Hank's an outlier for that because she needs to be fed, so.
I should say that feeding started back in the early 1920s. Out of a sense of guilt for the city because it was an oil spill that killed a lot of waterfowl around the estuary and Lake Merritt. And the people of Oakland felt so bad about that the city voted funding to start feeding the birds there to kind of compensate them for the damage that was done. And that went on for almost a century.
I'd like to chip in that we have some information about how long the predecessors of Hank lived at Lake Merritt. We had Hector and Helen, and I believe that Hector lived to be 27 years old, and Helen lived to be 29 years old. And they were known as individuals because they were adopted.
How old is Hank again? Because that's an interesting point that Katie was making.
22.
22.
Yeah, 22-ish.
And what is the lifespan of a pelican?
I found a resource that said a pelican kind of in Hank's situation could live up to 35. Like they had a record of someone living to be 35, which is why Stephen and I started having discussions about what is her retirement going to look like. We're not going to live forever, or we're not going to live in Oakland forever. Or so it's a lot of pressure on the two of us to be able to feed her. And that's why being able to feed her in the bird yard allows a whole team of people to go. She doesn't have to be familiar with each person. She just has to see that bucket is there for her and it's filled with fish.
Right. And I'm sorry, maybe this is an ignorant question, but why is the city so resistant to doing that? And is it?
The reason that they can't afford it, basically. When they shut down the Rotary Nature Center, they wanted to get out of the whole nature center, bird yard, that building as a visitor center or a museum that's open, 5 days a week for long hours. It needs a lot of staffing. It didn't fit their model of what OPR facilities are supposed to do. So they wanted out of that whole scene, but they knew that they were that Hank was there. So they kind of made up a story and started citing rules and regulations that said, well, you don't have to feed wild birds. And they got some people to agree with them that said, no, there's plenty of fish. Hank doesn't need to be fed. And that became the narrative until we started to push back on that. And that's why they did it. Prior to abandoning Hank, in order to hide it, they tried to move her twice. And take her to Lindsay Wildlife Museum. When I was there when they came to throw a big net over her and stuff her in one of those animal care and control boxes and drive her to Walnut Creek. They can't keep her here, and by keeping her here, they're admitting that they have to feed her, but they're also saying that they shouldn't feed her. So there's really no reason to move her if she's fine here. So it's all very convoluted. And but basically it's a big operation. You need a staff person to go every day. You need to train them. So yeah.
I have to say, I think it's actually quite doable with a volunteer group. So like I said earlier, I think if we could get, I'm just going to throw out the names, the Oakland Zoo volunteers, the Wild Care volunteers, volunteers from Golden Gate Bird Alliance. That would be nice to have their support. That's the former Golden Gate Audubon group. What I think I mentioned Wild Care, Yggdrasil, which has a lot of volunteers nearby, and Palomacy, which is a pigeon rescue that's known worldwide. We could get volunteers from all these groups and provide Hank the need of having continuous care. Sure, it might be a little bumpy at the beginning, but it's one bird and we're having fish donated by the zoo. So everything's covered. The only thing we need right now is access, permission from the city of Oakland. And so that's what we need help with. The other thing I wanted to bring up, it's not just about Hank. The bird yard has supposed to provide access to fresh water. It's very critical for wildlife, especially those that are migrating and passing through. Those ponds were meant for birds to refresh themselves, to drink water. We used to have so many different, and perhaps Mr. Covell can speak to this, but a lot of migratory birds would use those bird ponds that are freshwater as a stopping place. So I don't know, could I ask you to speak a little bit more about that?
Yeah, that was the thinking, and there's been a freshwater pond there again since the 1920s, and the wisdom was always that because those birds are on primarily salt water around Lake Merritt, that they needed access to fresh water at least once in a while, and so that was the purpose of having the freshwater pond there. And I think there's still some thought behind that's an important feature to provide for birds. And seasonally, we still get quite a few migrant birds that come through there. It'd be nice for them to have access. There used to be a freshwater pond also on island number 1. I don't know if that's still operable or not, but those were the two basic sources where birds could get fresh water there on the lake.
Like CN, maybe we should have. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Which one is considered island number 1?
It's the island closest to the nature center.
There is no fresh water.
Oh, okay. There was a pond there since the 1920s.
I don't know the last time that anyone from the city of Oakland actually has maintained those islands. So that is something to put on the to-do list.
And the next incoming mayor should swim in Lake Merritt to say it's healthy, just like they did in Pelican. I'm seeing several kind of bits from the audience. There's join a trash group pickup. There's a council meeting reference. Obviously, there's the GoFundMe. There's the Rotary Club. Can each of you tell the audience, which earlier was over 100, like what are some actionable things that individuals can do beyond the GoFundMe? I think everyone is really eager to contribute and partake, whether that's coming on Saturday or Sunday to meet you guys at the park to help. But Can each of you just share one actionable item that you think would help move this cause along?
I don't have anything set up.
Hello? Because it's you guys were pausing, and I thought while you maybe give it a thought or a minute, and I wanted to check in about audience participation or questions at this moment, because we've heard so much and wonderful information tonight. I didn't want to miss that opportunity.
Yes, you have a question. Actually, I've been reading.
I saw a hand
Yeah.
moments ago. Maybe that person is not still with us, but if any of the audience members, I felt, and we could hold that last question though as a response.
Thank you, David. Is there anyone, after we answer this actionable item, because it's something I keep seeing, whether it's donating food or organizing or who to write. And then if there's anyone from the audience that would like to directly ask questions, please do so.
In that case, allow me to lead off on the question at hand. Because as I've listened through the entire program, and as I've excuse me. Oh yes, if there's anyone here who doesn't recognize me, I'm David Wofford, co-chair of the Rotary Nature Center Friends with Katie Noonan, and presenters of your Lakeside chat this evening, and very much involved in the situation with Hank and the stewardship at Lake Merritt, and the information we've been going over tonight, which has included from various speakers a number of opportunities to engage. And I recognize that there's going to take some formatting of those positions from amongst each of the speakers. I'm familiar with most of you and been engaged. I don't know, and you guys can obviously speak to this, but I think that we have to, in individual cells, organize the actions and set them up. So there would be some angles where there would letter writing campaigns, then there's the GoFundMe. And these separate items should be identified and somehow shared with the entire group and promoted as information and awareness about Hank is promoted.
So this event is definitely one of those, which is great. But is there an online petition? Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
Sorry, just to circle back, in terms of actionable stuff to do right now, I don't know. Individually, you can even just individually, people talking to it about your neighborhood advisory groups, or somebody on the staff of your city councilman, or just sort of an email, or if you happen to be during this election year, you happen to be somewhere with a candidate or something, maybe ask them about it. I'm hoping to start a petition that's sort of framed around a justice for Hank kind of narrative. I'm also trying to thinking of starting a tactic called an action letter that I learned to do when I did advocacy at the food bank, where people can sign on to this, and electronically it goes to, it can go to everybody. I can go to state senators, it can go to city council people, it can go to the mayor, we can send it to people at Fish and Game, and on and on and on, that lays out our position and asks for their support. So those are the things that I'm thinking of doing. So in the future, look for that and get involved with that.
Oh, thank you. To be more clear, I think Katie Noonan and I should prepare a cheat sheet. We should confer with and collect a cheat sheet on the number of actions that people can do and supply that in addition to whatever is shared tonight, as Stephen just did. Thank you.
Judith Ann Smith, I see your hand is raised. Are you able to address? Yeah. Okay, great.
You know, people highlight you at the Heron Nest site months ago. Good to see you. I volunteer with Big Dream. And how many people here on this call that we involved, can you collect emails? Can you not hear me?
Yes, and through the registration at Eventbrite, we're able to retrieve the emails. And one part of our articulation is that Katie Noonan and I would confer with the parties involved and collect the various actions that people could take and send them out in one cheat sheet type of a email.
Well, my thought was
go ahead.
My thought was really that there are so many people that really want to get involved in some kind of action and task force that, you know, if we could put our email in the chat, and then maybe we could be all organized separately somehow.
So we always send a post Lakeside chat email to people, and in that we could give an opportunity to people to sign up for one or more opportunities to help Hank. I personally would like to note that the situation of Hank is not only a situation for her, and we care about her deeply, but it's also a detriment to the children of Oakland, the kids who come by and are deprived of interpretation and connection with Hank and with other wildlife there. And that's the approach that we at Rotary Nature Center Friends have been taking, to sharing our Lakeside chats and in doing in-person work with young people and with the public in general at table and so forth. And these would be occasions where we could spread the word as well. But I'd also like to say that veteran of this, we shared the letters of those children from Cleveland. They contributed them to the city council and mayor. I personally went to city council and put all of the over 300 names from an online petition into the record there. And I think the key is visibility in all its aspects in a respectful and insistent way. And and we need to support Hank in terms of the physical needs that she has. But we also, there's a political strand here that can be addressed by being in our stewardship and in our advocacy for all the people and having access to this natural beauty and the opportunity to learn about our world that's right at our doorstep and is being neglected. That's what I would like to say. So I will definitely send out an email if you would like to be added to like a Friends of Hank list or something and have your email shared. That way, we are not about sharing the list of people that we receive through our program with anybody, but you can contribute your own name. Yeah, and this is part of a post chat email. That's what we need to do on that. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from the audience? We have over 50 people. Please don't be shy.
Well, I haven't had the chance to fully express my appreciation for the filmmakers. I'm just so amazed by the film. I think it's wonderful. Can't believe you did it in a weekend, and that's awesome. And thank you so much. It's a wonderful rendition of the topic and what's going on, and to a revelation of the work that I've witnessed and the experience that I've witnessed Stephen and Lila doing over the last several years. So it's quite moving for me in that way personally as well. And the others, Alex, I can't believe this is the first time I'm seeing you face to face. And how did that happen? But thank you so much for for your work. I've been sketching you as we talked. I think I captured the true essence there. I should try to hold it up. But thank you all. John Hill.
Could I say a question? My question is simply if we're going to have an email, be receiving an email, I'm wondering where it would come from. As somebody who does not check email all the time, I would love to have something I could check. And I think many of us, speaking for myself, would love to get it involved. And I think some people tonight are proposing some leadership. And if you guys step forward, from the Rotary Center, and of course, Stephen and Lila, that would be great. And I want to say to Kari, excuse me, that seeing the film a second time, this is Barbara Sonneborn speaking, was a great treat. I mean, I really love seeing it another time, and I think it's holding up. I think the sound was actually better, and so was the picture tonight. So I love to do something as a filmmaker myself to help get that out. We need to communicate with a lot of people. And I want to thank the people from the Rotary Center and Joe and our wonderful, how do you say your name, Mandana? Our leader?
Mandana, thank you.
Mandana. And just everybody who's here. There's a lot of energy here to harness. And Stephen, you have some great ideas and people will help you. We just have to get organized to do it. And what time do you usually feed, Hank? When I've been a little under the weather, so I haven't been able to walk on the lake, but I want to be able to maybe get over there and meet you. I've seen Lila. Yeah.
For the last few weeks, we haven't been doing it at all because she has had visitors. So we're, fingers crossed that they stay through Christmas and we won't have to come visit her. But to answer your question, it's since the fish die off in the terrible climate years, we're not really on a regular schedule. It changes it could be every couple of days, every week. And just when we think it's settled, she'll change it back to a different time or in the morning from the evening. We're just we just watch her and are ready to go when we think she needs us.
I mean, it seems like two totally bottom line things are to get the feeding yard back and fresh water. And then for the city of Oakland, I mean, there are beautiful nature preserves all over this country. There's big corporations in this city, and somebody who knows how to do some fundraising needs to get out there and begin to do it. So
yes, and that's all these things that we're talking about doing was the great hope for this film, and why I'm happy to have been in it, because we wanted it to serve. I mean, I wanted it to serve as the start of something and a call to action, and from the reaction tonight, it seems that that it's going to do that. So yeah, just getting started.
And what a great start you and Lila have made. I really appreciate all of this. I'd like to I may have passed people by, but Lila posted a link to an online petition with a specific goal of asking the city to allow Hank to be fed in the bird yard. As a first action step, I would strongly urge people to take a look at that petition and sign if they feel that they're in agreement. And also to mention, Rotary Nature Center Friends is sending out to everybody the bird walk information from Kari Paul's monthly bird walk. If you're interested in getting that, she writes a column and we send that out. So if you're interested in birds, that will tell you a little bit about some of the other birds and their population situation and their activities and antics. So you can let me know if you would like to receive that as well. So anyway, just a fantastic start and a beautiful film, Kari, just a wonderful gift to Oakland.
How do we get back to the petition? I signed a petition at the film screening at the Parkway. Is this the same petition or a different petition? All right. Well, so how do we get back here to that other, petition?
I believe at the new Parkway, it was just a sign-up sheet for emails. And then once there was a petition, I would send it out. So I will just add any emails on there to the listserv to get the petition out to everyone.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Likewise, we will send this out in our post chat. Everybody will receive a post chat, and this will be a link. Will be included if you choose to sign it.
So I wanted to clarify something that I think might need clarifying. The Rotary Nature Center is staffed by Oakland's Department of Parks, Recreation, and Youth Development. And unfortunately, it's that staff that is preventing us from feeding Hank in the bird yard. This group is different than Rotary Nature Center Friends, which is the one that is putting on this Lakeside chat. So I just wanted to make that super clear to folks. And if anyone has questions about that, Katie and David are definitely the right people to ask.
Thank you for that clarification.
Miss Michelle Cox has something to say. Thank you, James Covell, for coming on board tonight. It's always good to see a fellow interpreter. And now since you've left the constraints of Oakland and grown up and gone on your own way, you're doing a great job at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Please keep us in your thoughts and prayers and check in with us here in Oakland because we need your assistance. Thank you, sir. Bye.
We really appreciate Jim. He's the chairman of our board of directors for Rotary Nature Center. And he's a wealth of knowledge and wisdom.
Lila's words just a moment ago were making me think of some words earlier, which is that some of the work at hand is larger than Hank, is bigger than Hank, although Hank is a very iconic representation of, as Jim Covell put it earlier, sort of an abandonment or a movement away from addressing nature reserve type of issues here in the city of Oakland. And Lila and Stephen and Katie and I and a number of other, Jim Covell, a number of other volunteers have been working hard for many years to address many of these issues. And Hank is a very, very significant part of it for the ways that Katie Noonan alluded to moments ago when she talked about how we integrate awareness of him with the many students that we serve each year, and how discussing him becomes much more than about talking about nature and evolution and what happens to an animal when it has its wing broken in the act of trying to feed Hank and letter writing. You know, it's really an engagement, a more holistic engagement about the processes here at Lake Merritt and in Oakland. And so we acknowledge that. And so John Hill, you there? Yeah, you go, John. You mentioned earlier, you said you had this idea, this dream of these spies, and you had to kind of throw that away. Don't throw it away too far. In fact, this tape will self-destruct in 5 seconds when I'm done.
I love that, David. What you said is Hank is kind of the portal to the movement, the invisible work maybe being done in a way. I wonder, sorry, somebody also wants to chime in. Hank is one way of describing what's happening across Oakland, and I'm wondering if there's ways to share other ways that Oakland is maybe not meeting the mark. Animals are first and foremost, they require humans to protect them, but it's such a portal to other aspects of Oakland that also need attention and funding and protection.
Someone's out there wants to say something, I have to jump in and say, Mandana, in reference to that, yes, the idea about, you know, how is it that we treat human beings and animals and people who are injured, who are hurt, who are disabled, who are broken. And so Hank is a wonderful portal regarding that, as the case may be.
I like to think that animals probably bring out the best in humans and help us stay in touch with our humanity because of nature in front of us. And if we lose nature, I think we lose a piece of ourselves and a big piece of our humanity. And that's, you know, in the film where you talked about Lake Merritt is really about people more than the birds, and that's absolutely true. But I think it's the birds there that help us stay in touch with the most important things inside ourselves. And that's why Hank and a lot of the other wildlife there, I think, is such a key part of our life. It's not something aside from what's going on in Oakland. It's the heart of what goes on in Oakland. And I think that's why we're really trying to keep it present and stay in touch with it, and why we're fighting for Hank and all the other nature that's present at the lake.
As bodies of water have been crucial in human experience down through the ages. And so now, particularly here in a modern environment, because I don't know what happens in neighborhoods in New York or Rio de Janeiro or Hong Kong, but here in Oakland, we have the opportunity to, you know, continue that age-old experience.
All living things need access to fresh water, period.
To me, when the bird yard and the sanctuary and the nature center were all working right, what that place represented to me was Oakland's value. Oakland's values towards nature and the animals goes to show you how is also a reflection of how they care for its people, and why it's important. I forget the exact wording about, I think Gandhi has a famous aphorism about being able to judge a society and how it treats its people by how well it treats its animals. I think the nature center and the bird yard and the sanctuary has been an opportunity for Oakland, at least, to demonstrate its values to protecting nature and its appreciation of nature. And to me, that's what's been lost there.
What can be gained?
Yeah, and Jim Cavell can speak to this because maybe this is becoming full circle. When this all got started, the people led the city in getting this all going. Jim's dad wasn't an employee of the city. He started doing this, and then they kind of backed him up. So the people have always been ahead of the city when it comes to the stuff down at the lake. And you talk about how the city doesn't have the stretched resources to do it. That's fine. There are tons of volunteers standing by to step in and do that job for them. Gladly. They want to. They're passionate about this stuff. So maybe hopefully that's happening again.
Stephen, in the film, if I'm not mistaken, you expressed a concept, and I felt like you had a bit of a not positive association with it. You mentioned the terms of privatization, and outsourcing of the work there and the operations. And so I'll just volunteer that, to my mind, there's a lot that's needed that maybe the city can't handle right now, and that could be served better by an organized group in order to coordinate the volunteers that you just mentioned.
Yep.
And, I'd go so far as say that the Rotary Nature Center Friends would be a likely group as any to do that. But what are your thoughts about that, if any?
I'm open to any group or groups. The bigger the coalition, the better.
Well, I want to just give a warm thank you again for everyone. This has been honestly, one of the best Friday nights I've had in a very long time. So I feel so inspired. I want to go run a mile. I really appreciate, obviously, the filmmakers, Kari and John, Stephen, and Lila. Thank you so much for what you do. Alex, thank you as well for bringing visibility to our hosts, Katie, James, David, and the entire Rotary Club. Keep getting the word out there, and I'll see all of you again next Friday, the same time, right? Just kidding. But thank you again. I really appreciate all the work that everyone does, and to our participants for being here tonight on your Friday night as well. I hope you leave here inspired, and next time you're in Lake Merritt, keep an eye out for our friend Hank.
Hey, Mandana.
Thank you.
Maybe we can have you back sometime as a guest co.
I would love to be here. I'm back in Oakland, so please, I would love to, even just as a participant as well. I really enjoy this crowd. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you, everybody. It's been a great evening. And come back and join us in September. And we can do a lot in between now and then. So we'll be sending out the chat, and maybe all the organizing begin.